50. Gryph backed away in shock. Every fiber of his being recoiled at the idea. But he was also desperate to save his friend. There was no training that could help him make this decision. "I thought you said you were already dead." "Yes," Simon said. His demeanor had changed. He was no longer a scared child, but a being who had existed for untold millennia. "My body died so long ago that I'm not even sure that this is what I looked like." "I don't understand. If you are already dead, how can I kill you?" "You must kill my soul. It enables this place to exist. Without it, the Barrow King cannot survive, and he will cease to be. You must sacrifice me to kill him, while he is still weak." "No." "It is the only way to save your friend, and I no longer want to live this half-life." Gryph paced back and forth in anguish. He could not destroy a soul, even to save one. He looked from Simon to the Barrow King, and then to Wick. Think, damn you!" Gryph bashed the palm of his hand against his forehead. Something tickled at the back of his mind. Then it came to him, like a tsunami wave, and he knew what he had to do. "I may have another way, but I need you to do something for me," Gryph said. "What?" Simon asked. "Stop feeding this old fuck." "I'll try," Simon said, "but he is able to compel me." "Try. That is all I can ask." Gryph turned to the Otserio, the ancient evil that had destroyed countless lives. He was already looking younger. Gryph had no idea how much longer Wick could hold out, but Gryph suspected he did not have long. "Hey, old man, your days are done." Gryph built up mana and cast Telepathic Bond. He reached out with his mind and found the wisp that was the mind of the Barrow King. It was a tainted, oily pond of scum and sewage. Its rancid taste nearly made Gryph vomit, but he would not fail. Their minds touched, and Gryph showed the Barrow King his Godhead. The spectral creature pulsed and morphed, rushing at Gryph with a hunger unlike any it had ever felt. Gryph held fast as Utserio's mind swam into his own, burrowing to the deep recesses where the Godhead resided. Gryph pushed forward, digging deep into the foul center of the Barrow King's mind. He was gambling all and knew that if he didn't find what he sought, then all was lost. Gryph pushed through memories of atrocities, nearly drowning in their pain and the utter joy Utserio had taken in inflicting them. It was like swimming through toxic mud. He burned and was suffocating under the wretched onslaught, but he kept swimming. He knew what he sought was there. He kept moving. He was getting close. He could feel it like a blind man felt heat. He dove deeper, and the world became blacker. It was down here, the knowledge he needed, the knowledge the Barrow King had guarded for millennia. Then he saw it, a mote of silver light puncturing the black crud. He swam deeper and deeper and reached it. At his touch, the world exploded in silver, and he stood in some kind of laboratory. He looked down and saw hands clad in an arcane robe. He looked up and saw a reflection looking back at him from a mirror of burnished silver. He was Utserio. A younger Utserio for sure, but the man all the same. There was another man with his back turned from Gryph. He was sharpening implements. "We are close, my friend," the man said, and the voice was familiar, like something from a distant dream or an often heard radio commercial. But the man did not turn around, and Gryph discovered he had no control over the body he now inhabited. He was living a memory. He felt himself look down, and there, tied to some kind of operating slab, was the boy Simon. A gag stoppered the terrified boy's mouth. Some skin on his torso had been flayed and burned, and sliced flesh dotted other parts of his small, quivering body. As Utserio moved to his side, the boy shivered and shook his head in a desperate no. Tears poured from his eyes. Gryph could feel what Utserio had felt that day, and it made his blood turn to ice. The man felt nothing that could be deemed a decent human emotion. No pity, no shame, no hesitation, just anxious excitement. Gryph felt himself smile down on the boy, and he lightly pet his forehead. "Everything will be all right," he lied. "Soon it will all be over." "Would you like a turn?" the familiar voice asked. "Why not, Morrigan?" Utserio said. "After all, this will be my crowning achievement." He lightly stroked Simon's head, and the fear exploded in the boy's eyes. Utserio looked up at the man holding out a scalpel like a device of torture, and Gryph knew why the voice was so familiar. "Alistair Bashard," Gryph said in horrified wonder. Yes, it will be." Morrigan, the man those of Earth knew as Alistair Bashard, the god worshipped by millions across Corrin as the High God Alaron, said, "Yes, I will remember this day forever." Then Gryph felt this body that he could not control torture Simon until the boy's body died. As a small part of his own soul died, Gryph reached out with assimilation. He had defeated the Barrow King in the realms. Now it was time to claim his prize. Gryph dug into the mind he shared with Utserio and grabbed the pulsing silver beacon. His mind exploded with knowledge. It was as if 1,000 hands made of acid, rotting death, plague, and pestilence dug into his mind and forced the knowledge to stick. You have learned the skill Soul Magic. Levels 1 to 25. Tier, Base, Skill Type, Active. You can now wield the power of Soul Magic. Soul Magic is the rarest and potentially the most powerful of all the spheres of magic. Soul Magic taps into the essence of the immortal soul for a wide range of abilities. Note, Soul Magic, while powerful, is also easy to abuse. Gryph would have vomited had he been in his own body, and the fact that neither Utserio nor Morrigan did told Gryph everything he needed to know about these two men. "Congratulations, Master," Morrigan said as he eased himself as fluid as a snake around the slab where Simon's body lay to face Utserio. You are truly the greatest mage alive. Gryph felt a smug smile form on Utsario's face as he drank in the praise. Then Morrigan moved with incredible speed, and Gryph felt a dagger puncture through the underside of his neck and up into his brain. Utsario died. Armed with the knowledge he'd come for, Gryph pulled from the Barrow King's dying mind and swam towards the surface. Compared to the vileness of the last scene, the acidic sewage he now swam through felt like a dip in a pool on a hot day. He slogged and swam, all the while desperate for release from the terrible despair and pain he felt. Simon's pain. He saw light above and emerged from the recesses of Utsario's foul mind and back to the lighter realm of his own mind. When a piercing agony, worse than Morrigan's dagger, exploded in his head. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to force the feeling to abate. Then, suddenly, it did. Gryph opened his eyes, and he was somewhere else. It was dark, and he was running. A gunshot rang out behind him, and he dodged to the right, rushing around a corner. Ahead, in the distance, he could see an illuminated tower. He recognized the memory that Utsario had dredged, one that he had desperately tried to bury. He was in Seoul, the place where he'd been left for dead. More gunshots rang out as he sprinted, and one caught him in the leg. He tumbled to the ground as a gasp of pain spat from his mouth. He got up and hobbled. He took a quick turn into an alley and moved as fast as he could. But it wasn't fast enough. Another shot took him in the back, high near the shoulder blade, and he went down, tumbling over. He tried to scramble back behind a rot-filled dumpster, but the man with the gun caught up with him. Gryph held his hands out, but he did not plead. The man grinned, raised his pistol, and took aim. "Hold!" came a voice that could not possibly be there. The man lowered his gun to his side. A dark shadow moved up behind him and gently eased the gunman aside. The man came into a halo of light from an overhead bulb, and Gryph gasped. "Hello, son." "Colonel," Gryph heard his former self, the man named Finn, say. "Still can't call me Dad? You were always the Colonel, and never my father." The Colonel took off his hat and passed it to the gunman. His aged face was determined, and Finn could see a future he would never live in the man's eyes. "I wish this wasn't necessary," the Colonel said. "I suppose we always knew this was how things would end up," Gryph said. "I suppose we did," the Colonel said as he pointed a gun and fired. The muzzle flash tore Gryph back to the tower. He looked down on Utsario, who now grinned at him with full awareness. The man was no longer old nor decrepit, but as young and vital as he was in the torture room with Morrigan and Simon. Gryph's eyes snapped over to Wick, slumped over and aged near beyond recognition. He didn't move. "No!" Gryph screamed, and his mind summoned up his newfound knowledge. He poured the power of his own soul into his hands and launched himself at the Barrow King. He was unsure what he wanted to do, but he knew he had to. "Your own father betrayed you, left you for dead, forced you into hiding. Oh, the torture you must have gone through, the need to know why, an answer you never received. Utserio laughed at him. Well, I know what you won't admit. He shot you, tried to kill you because you were a failure. You failed then and you will fail now. I will take the gift you have brought me, and then I will take all of Corin. Utserio flashed at Gryph and sunk a spectral hand into his chest. He felt fingers twine and dig and branch into him, seeking to extract the Godhead, the gift, the curse, the burden he bore. And what's more, I will find Bryn. Utserio cocked his head to the side. Your sister. You bastard, Gryph said through gritted teeth and a burst of spittle. Gryph arched his head back in pain as the revenant dug into his body. He felt small bits, strands of the Godhead, being ripped from their roots deep in his mind, his body, and his soul. The Barrow King was dragging them back to him like a fisherman pulling nets from the sea. Gryph could feel their paths and see them enter the mind of Utserio. Then he knew what he had to do. He focused his will and flashed up the tendrils, burrowing deeper and deeper. As he passed a threshold between his mind and the mind of his enemy, deep inside the foul mind of the Barrow King, he found the one point of light and pushed towards it. The pain in his chest and in his mind grew to blinding, and Gryph collapsed to his knees. With one final burst of effort, he reached out gently with both hands and curled them around the glowing cocoon like a father with a newborn babe. Inside, curled in a fetal position, was a small, glowing figure. This was Wick's soul. Black tendrils of oily darkness fired from the surrounding nothingness and burrowed into Gryph's body, worming their way towards the soul he protected. The pain was excruciating, and Gryph knew he would soon succumb. There was a way to survive. He could consume the soul he held and use its power. But that was an eternal death for Wick, and there was no coming back from such an act. Gryph closed his eyes and curled his body around Wick's soul. I am sorry. I am so sorry I have failed. A brightness built up, one that burned through the paltry defenses of Gryph's eyelids, yet the light did not bring pain, but hope. Deep in the darkest of pits, Gryph discovered something that neither Morrigan nor Utserio could ever know. A soul given freely is far more powerful than one consumed. Wick's soul enveloped Gryph, and the light expanded, burning away the stain of darkness. Gryph stood and launched himself upwards and outwards. He reached superluminal speed. The Barrow King grinned as his extraction of the Godhead neared completion. Soon he would be all-powerful. I am coming for you, Morrigan, the Barrow King said, and he began the maniacal chortle of the truly insane. The sound was like stone crushing flesh, horrid and unnatural. Then it suddenly choked off as a blazing light flowed from Utserio's mouth. He released Gryph's body and brought his hands to his throat. The blazing light was choking him, and it was growing brighter. Utserio would have screamed if he had been able, but the light prevented him. It grew and pulsed, and then exploded from the mage's mouth, twined and spun into the air above him, and then flashed downward and into the center of Gryph's forehead. Gryph's eyes snapped open, and they burned like two rising stars. Gryph stood and eased the Barrow King's clawed hand from his chest. Utserio swung his other hand, but his strength was failing, and Gryph caught it and snapped the wrist with ease. The tendrils disintegrated, and the Godhead settled back into him. The Barrow King struggled, long bereft of life and with no stolen soul to sustain his long-dead spirit. The Barrow King's true form was exposed, a desiccated corpse dry as tinder. The Barrow King's mouth opened in a final silent scream, and then his body disintegrated to dust and fell silent as the grave to the floor. Gryph towed the pile of ash at his feet. "He is truly dead," said a voice that was both Wick and Gryph. Gryph turned and walked to the slumped body of his friend. He gently took the gnome's head in his hands and opened his eyes. Gryph's hands glowed as he transferred Wick's soul back to his body. The glow faded, and Gryph fell to his knees, weakened beyond any weariness he had ever felt. He considered taking a nap right there, but then he felt small hands turn his face upwards. Wick, young and vibrant and grinning like a dick, was looking down on him. "Laying down on the job?" Wick asked. Gryph said nothing. He just laughed. He laughed like he had not laughed since entering the realms. He laughed like he had not laughed since he was young. A vision of Bryn and he laughing so hard that breath would not come infused his mind, his soul. A deep rumble built in the tower, dragging Gryph from his reverie. "What is happening?" "This place is going," Simon said. Gryph turned to see the small ancient boy standing. A look of sad resignation painted his face. Gryph walked up to him and knelt, taking his shoulders lightly in his hands. For once, the boy did not flinch from his touch. "What do you mean?" "It may have been my memories and my soul that powered this place, but it was his will that kept it together. Now it will fall, and I will fall with it." "There has to be a way out," Wick said, coming up to stand behind Gryph. Simon lowered his gaze to the floor as tears welled up in his eyes. "For you, maybe. You both have bodies waiting for you. Mine has long since turned to dust. There is nowhere for me to go. When this place dies—" Simon looked out the gaping hole in the side of the tower, drawing Gryph and Wick's gazes along with him. The world was disappearing. The edges of the mountains and the forests were disappearing like the edges of a Polaroid photo tossed into flames. "I will die with it." Gryph's mind flailed. "I will not let this be." "There is nothing to be done," Simon said, looking up at Gryph. "But I thank you. At least I am free." The white nothingness encroached further, eating at the fabric of the tower itself. Gryph's mind floundered. There had to be a way. He felt Wick's gentle touch on his shoulder, and he knew his friend was telling him they had to go. Simon walked over to the pile of dust that had once been Utserio and toed it with his left foot. At least he has nowhere to go either. Gryph's eyes widened. But he does. Simon and Wick both looked at Gryph. Or, more accurately, you do, Simon. Simon's face went grim as millennia of lies and mistrust flashed through his mind. It was as if the boy was angry at hope. Gryph could not blame him. He'd been betrayed and abused in a way that was inconceivable. Can you trust me? Gryph said, hand extended. Simon hesitated as the whiteness ate away at the world behind him. It had taken the walls and was now eating at the floors. Wick's grip on Gryph's shoulder intensified, but Gryph ignored his friend. Please, Gryph said. His eyes locked with Simon's, and time stretched. Finally, a small smile curled the boy's lips, and he ran forward, taking Gryph's outstretched hand. Gryph closed his eyes as the whiteness became the world.